Hi, I'm Chris with Safety First Firearms and Defense, and welcome to another gun tutorial. Today we're going to be discussing the DPM Multiple Spring Recoil Reduction System. This kit is going to replace your factory recoil spring or recoil spring guide. Opening this up, what we'll find inside: instruction manual, recoil spring guide, and three different options for recoil springs. They're all going to be all three different lengths and different strengths. Just go through the guide and select whichever spring suits your needs and your firearm. These kits are firearm specific, so make sure that you have the right kit for the right gun. I've got a couple different options here, and I'm going to demonstrate installing this recoil reduction system on three different firearms. Some kits are a little bit different depending on the firearm. The kit for my 320 has an end-capped adapter that we're going to install, and I'm going to go over that when I install it into the 320. The first step in this install, as with anything else we do with firearms, we want to make sure these firearms are unloaded and they're clear. So I'm going to go through that with all three different firearms. Make sure the barrel is pointing in a safe direction. Lock the slide to the rear. This pistol does have an external safety, so I want to make sure that's engaged. I'm going to do a visual and physical inspection of the mag well, and a visual and physical inspection of the chamber, and then double check that safety to make sure it's engaged. Now that we know that all three pistols are clear and safe, the next step for the install is to remove the slide from the frame. I'm going to go ahead and do that now with all three pistols, starting with the 320. Now that I've got my pistols disassembled, I've got the slides separate from the frame, we can begin the install of the recoil reduction system. And I'm just going to go through all three of these different options. Up top in the red, I have my P320 compact. It's also, or M18. They're the same pistol. On the top right, I have my P365 standard size. And in the middle, I have my 43X MOS slide. Alright, so I've got my P320 kit first. We'll start that install. So you want to remove the factory recoil spring and recoil spring guide. Different pistols, they may have the recoil spring and recoil spring guide in one component, which is what's going to be present here on the 320. This spring is under tension, so I want to be careful that I'm covering the spring and removing it gently so that the spring doesn't fly out. Alright, so I'm going to remove the tension and then pull up and out. And now we've got this recoil spring and recoil spring guide, which again, like I said, is one component. It's one assembly, so it's going to come out in one piece. I'll set that aside. I don't need to remove the barrel, so I'm just going to leave that in the slide. I'm going to open my kit. Alright, on this kit, it does require me to use that end cap, alright, that's provided in the kit. So what I want to do, once I remove this from the baggie, I will put the cap in first into the hole where the recoil spring is going to go. Alright. I'll take my new recoil spring and recoil spring guide, which in the kit they are two separate components. Alright, so you're going to have two pieces going forward. You're going to select whichever spring length suits your needs, and there's instructions on how to select it and what the different spring lengths do and how they can affect your recoil reduction. So at your own time, you can go through this instruction guide and pick out the spring that suits your needs. So I've selected the one that I want to use. I'll slide the spring onto the recoil spring guide. I'm going to put the front end of the spring into the hole. All right. Now, this spring is a lot longer than my stock recoil spring, so it's going to give me a little bit of issues if I don't properly control the spring. When we're compressing the spring, it's going to want to bend on you. So you're just going to take your time to get the spring in there correctly and make sure that your recoil spring and recoil spring guide are properly seated. All right. Now I've got that installed. I can set this slide aside. Just keeping my stuff together, I'll put this back in the package so I don't lose it. Alright, next we'll do the Glock 43X. Again, selecting whatever spring best suits your needs. Same deal with this recoil spring guide. It's going to be one piece, one component. Maybe be careful to maintain and control that recoil spring. Pull that out and remove it, set that aside. There is no end cap adapter on the 43X, so I don't need to worry about doing that. I can go ahead and insert the spring into the top hole. Alright, controlling that spring, getting it seated in place. Perfect. Last, we have the P365 standard version. All right. Removing that recoil spring and recoil spring guide. Using my hand to cover that spring to control it. To help in case the spring tries to get loose and shoot out, I've got that hand covering it to control that spring. Set this aside. Again, no end cap for this one as well. So I'm just going to stick this straight in, controlling that spring, pressing it down and getting it properly seated. Now that I have it installed on all three slides, I can go ahead and reassemble. With the firearm disassembled, sometimes the longer springs will give you a little bit of an issue and they'll bend. You can control that by using that hand again to cover the spring while pushing it into the recoil spring guide hole. Now I've got my new recoil spring guide installed in all my slides. I can go ahead and reinstall the slides onto the frame. Now I want to do a function check, so I'll rack my slide a couple times. Right. Good. Now that I've fully assembled my pistols and I've done my function check, my install is complete. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, check out some of our other videos on our channel and be sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. For information on our upcoming in-person and virtual trainings, check out our Facebook page, which can be found in the video description below. And as always, remember to keep safety first.